Good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you this morning from the comfort of my own home, and I understand that Pastor Bart is going to be preaching out of Habakkuk 3, and I would like to draw your attention to actually the end verses of Habakkuk, and I find them very encouraging. And starting in verse 17, it says, "Even though the fig trees have no blossoms, and there are no grapes on the vines, even though the olive crop fails, and the fields lie empty and barren, even though the flocks die in the fields and the cattle barns are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, able to tread upon the heights." Now that last part that I just read about the hinds feet, that the Lord makes me sure-footed as a deer, is actually there's similar phrasing that King David himself uses in the Psalms. In Psalm 18, chapter 18, verses 33, King David actually almost says the exact same thing concerning him, God rescuing him from his enemies and from King Saul. And King David says is exactly like this. He says, "He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, enabling me to stand on mountain heights." And what it drew me back to when I read that was, I remembered when we lived in Golden, we lived amongst the Purcell and the Selkirk Mountains, and we were very, very close to the Rocky Mountains. And in that whole Golden, Invermere, Banff, Lake Louise area, there was these absolutely beautiful, glorious mountains, but many of them were actually quite treacherous to climb. If you were going to try to conquer any of them, you would find very shortly there up the mountain that they just the faces of them just seemed absolutely like inconquerable. And it was neat because we had these little mountain goats, and you could see them just like perched on these like very, 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 very thin, tiny ledges on the side of the mountain, and you wondered how on earth they ever got there, and you wondered what it was that was keeping them there and keeping them from falling. And Habakkuk and King David are saying, like, our faith, the faith that we have in the Lord Jesus Christ, is the thing that keeps us atop those ledges. It keeps us stable and sturdy and fixed in times of distress and trouble. And so I love it when I read earlier that it says, even though the fig tree doesn't blossom, even though there's all these troubles happening around me, I will yet rejoice in the God of my salvation. I will rejoice in this salvation, in this hope, in this faith that I have been given, because we recognize that faith isn't something that we can conjure up on our own. It is actually a gift from God, and that faith makes us sure-footed. It is solid ground. It is the little suction cups on the bottom of our feet that keep us that keep us sure-footed and keep us stable during difficult, challenging, and hard times. And I love it because John Gill, he's a commentator, and he puts it this way when he talks about our faith. And he says this. He says concerning the Christians, "Nor will any difficulties, which may seem like hills and mountains and cragged rocks, deter or discourage the church from the hope of the gospel or from their duty, but they shall walk on securely and firmly," meaning that no matter what comes against us, no matter the trial, no matter the tribulation, no matter whether it be persecution or sorrows, nothing, not only will it not separate, can those things not separate us from the love of God, but they will not deter us from our objective in the Lord Jesus Christ, and that is to be gospel, that is to be light and salt in this world, and to be gospel carriers. And so I love that idea that our faith is one that overcomes, and it's one that leads us from victory to victory. So I hope that these words encourage you as well, and I hope that you can walk that you walk confidently and securely in the knowledge of Jesus Christ, and be encouraged at the fact that the church in times of trouble always becomes stronger. If you look throughout history, that the resolve of the church is actually awakened through adversity.